Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all an update to my Cardfight Vanguard Cardinal Orfist deck profile for post-Blazing Dragon Reborn. I've always been a fan of the Orfist deck. It focuses on using the many different set orders for the Abyssal Dark Knight that you can use to set up all the different power of calling your Shadow Army tokens using your main go-to Vanguard, which is Cardinal Dominist Orfist Regis, as a means to get multiple attacks. Also, being able to call out new Shadow Army tokens when this unit attacks based on how many different world orders you have set up. So let's go ahead and get started with the update to this deck profile. So for the ride deck is pretty much the same since the Festival Collection for 2022 came out. One Cardinal Fang Fovi. When wrote upon, if you went second, draw a card. Our grade 1 is Cardinal Noid Rotis, and just the standard when placed on Vanguard, search your deck for up to one world card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So you can search out any of the world orders to set up and have your Abyssal Dark Knight begin. And also, our grade 2 is Cardinal Noid Cubicia. When a world is put into your order zone, choose one of your units and it gets plus 5,000 till end of turn. So you can just have this unit get plus 5,000 to attack for 15 against your opponent. And our main go-to grade 3 is Cardinal Dominist Orfist Regis. As the newer form of Orfist, it just adds so much more pressure to the deck along with the copy we were running in the ride deck. We were running 3 additional copies in the main deck. With this card, when placed on Vanguard, choose up to one world card from your hand or drop and put it into your order zone. So this doesn't count as your activation of one order per turn. So you can easily set up 2 orders in your order zone by your normal set activation, and then just when you place one with Orfist Regis every time you ride it. So Persona rides make it a very powerful choice, because then each time you'll just get an additional order placed. And when this unit attacks, if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, counter +1, discard a card from your hand, and for every 2 world cards in your order zone, call up to 1 Shadow Army token to rear, and it gets plus 5,000 until end of battle. So with this, you have the multiple attacks that I spoke of before, being able to call out those additional Shadow Army tokens, and then after your rear guards have attacked, call over them with the new ones that this card calls out after it attacks. And I also run for the grade 3s 4 copies of the new Cardinal Dragon Nuvoria. On rearguard, when this unit attacks, it gets plus 2,000 to end of turn for end of battle for each world card in your order zone. So that's just an additional 2,000 power. It's great because if you have 6 set up, it's plus 12,000, and then you have the 25,000 that this card can attack with alone. And when this unit is retired from rearguard, if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, you may call a Shadow Army token to rear. So when you call over your unit with a Shadow Army token, you can get the additional one, since you'll just use that Shadow Army token, calling over this card, and then giving 1 additional token. So early game, it really helps with that playstyle with the deck. And for the other grade 3 setup, we're running 3 copies of Aiding Monster Tectian. Along with this card being the additional setup, you have more of a means to search out other cards for your order zone, being able to use this card when it's discarded from your hand during your turn. You look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 set order from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So you have the search power with your other order cards, being able to add them to your hand. And just with this one, if it's a discard, getting an additional search after using it for the ride deck, or even if you have it for some of the other options by discarding a card, like with Orfist Regis cost for the counterblast, you have a search for an additional order thanks to this card. It's the only grade 2 we run. I just really like the new grade 3 Cardinal Dragon Nuvoria. A lot better for the setup than the other grade 2, which was a Counterblast 1 for a Shadow Army token, because then we can save our Counterblast that we have for the additional search and use of Orfist Regis. For our grade 1s that we run on the deck, still running the 4 Cardinal Noid Thumbarino. When this unit boosts a Shadow Army token, you may have this unit get plus 15,000 power until end of turn. If you do at the end of that battle, retire all of your rear guards in the same column as this unit and draw 1 card. So it's just when it boosts the Shadow Army token, which should be the guarantee for a lot of your plays, because then it'll clear out that column, which most of the time with Orfist Regis, you will call a brand new unit to begin with. So then this just gives you draw power, making up for the 1 unit you retire, which is her, and the Shadow Army token that also goes away. I also have 3 copies of Detonation Mutant Bubble Mine. At the end of the battle, this unit boosted. If your order zone has a set order, put it into your soul and countercharge 1. It builds up soul power, but also gives you power for your counterblast by being able to countercharge. I run 3 of this card, ideally, for the other grade 1s. I do want to run more Cardinal Principal Kagula. When this unit is placed on rearguard, if your world order is Dark Knight, you may soul charge 1. If it's Abyssal Dark Knight, you may soul charge 2. Now, this card just helps with your soul charging power because you will use it a lot for your world orders when you set them, just because you have Overcoming an Eternity, which is a Soul Blast of 2, or your Howling Moon Knight, which is a Soul Blast of 1. Normally, you don't have to play it with a Soul Blast if you just used Orfist Regus, but if you're going to be activating them normally, you will still need that Soul Power, which this is a card that comes in handy, giving you a Soul Charge 2. And if your world is Abyssal Dark Knight, you can Soul Blast 1, retire this unit, and call a Shadow Army token to rearguard. The Shadow Army tokens just get stronger with your 1 order, which we'll get to in just a bit, and this just adds to that power altogether. Ideally, if you wanted to run 2 additional copies of this card, you can drop the number of Thumberino to 4, and then maybe even run 2 Tectean, or even put your Nevoria to 3. This card just is really, really useful for that setup, and I want to run more copies of it, but sadly I only have 2 to work with. And then lastly, for the grade 1s, just 4 of the Sentinels, still running the Violet Dragon. They do the same thing as the newest Sentinel we got, and just, an option card to run. For that discarding, if you wanted to run the Blitz Order, you can just take out 1 of the grade 1s and put in a copy of the Blitz Order to replace that other copy. For our orders, I am running 4 copies of Howling Moonlit Night. With this card, after the set order is played, it puts into your order zone. You play it with a Soul Blast of 1. When it's put into the order zone, you draw a card. And if your order zone has world cards, the following effects are activated in quarter to the number of cards. If it's 1, it becomes Dark Knight. If it's 2 or more, it becomes Abyssal Dark Knight. You need Abyssal Dark Knight to use Orfist Regus and a good number of different cards in the deck. But being able just to place Howling Moonlit Night and get an additional draw, so if it's in your drop zone, let's say you discarded it for a ride deck cost, you can at least put it back there thanks to cards like Orfist Regus. And the other order that I run is Overcoming an Eternity, running 3 copies of this card. You play it with the Soul Blast of 2, and with this card from the order zone, if your order zone only has world cards, the following effects are activated according to the number of cards in your order zone, +1. And with it, when your Shadow Army token is placed, that unit gets plus 5,000 to end of turn. So if you have all 3 of these Overcoming an Eternities played, that's plus 15,000 power to your Shadow Army tokens, which are normally 15,000 power to begin with. So just calling one out and having 30,000 power and not even having the Persona Ride power or any other additional boosted power is quite scary for this order as well. If you wanted to run 4 of this card, you can always drop 1 of the Howling Moonlit Night to 3 and putting 4 of this for more of a pressure attack that your units can do. For the trigger lineup, I am running 7 critical. If you wanted to run the critical with the skill, you can take it out for one of these spots. I have the new Star Aggression Dragon and 3 of the Cardinal Draco for the 7 lineup for the triggers, and 4 copies of the Amelorate Connector, the additional 5k shield, draw trigger just as additional guard, and I do like draws over fronts in this deck just so you have more hand consistency, with the heals being 2 copies of the Cardinal Prima and 1 copy of Creaking World, and Obifold for the additional heals with abilities to guard against the additional multiple attacks or the additional criticals your opponent may have. With the over trigger being the Eldo Breath, this just adds even more immense pressure, being able to play this card as a double of all your critical and power for your units on the field. And it can be early game pressure, especially if you got a critical before you revealed this. As for the plays, just remember when you have Orfist Regus in the new grade 3, you attack with this card, and then also if you attack with Orfist Regus using the skill of Regus, you'll call over this new grade 3 with the Shadow Army token, and that will activate the said grade 3. So if you only can call 1 Shadow Army token with Orfist Regus early game, as long as you have this grade 3 retired, you can call that additional one, and that can be your answer to getting the multiple attacks off very early with only having, let's say, 2 cards in your order zone to begin with. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. It's a really awesome deck, and Orfist still continues to remain one of my favorites from Brantgate, so I hope you all give it a try. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Qualia out.